Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Get Visible, a podcast for business owners helping them to grow, have a sustainable business, and get more visibility online. I'm Dawes Brown, and I'll be bringing you SEO and digital marketing tips, as well as interviews and conversations with other business owners. So, let's get started.
In today's episode, I'm joined by Kirsten Morrison. She's a human design and empowerment mentor, guiding purpose-driven women to activate their legacy identity and be fully seen and confident in expressing their soul gifts. She is the host of the Expressed podcast, human design educator, an NLP practitioner, breathwork facilitator, and alchemizes it all together to work on a mind, body, and soul transformation. It's her mission to support women to remember that they're one-of-a-kind brilliance and maximize their potential in pursuit of their purpose. Kirsten's mantra is there is only one way, and that is your way. And she helps you to create a blueprint for your success that is as unique as you are. Thanks, Kirsten, and welcome to the Let's Get Visible podcast. I'm so excited to have you as a guest on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. So we're going to dive right in. There are a few questions that I wanted to go through specifically on today's podcast episode. And the first one is how your business began. So telling us a little bit about your business and if it was from a passion project or something that was actually planned.
So it's so interesting, this question, because I feel like I've actually been trying to start a business ever since I was 15 years old. I actually started a line of handbags when I was 15 and was selling them to stores while I was at school.
Wow.
And obviously that wasn't necessarily my path. And I got a little bit derailed from like high school and parties and boys, let the entrepreneurship ball drop there. But after that, I really feel like I've always been driven to have my own thing, and I've tried so many different paths to get there. And I had, a fashion blog, I've had a fashion label, I've had a jewelry line, I had a joint fashion blog, I was a stylist, I dabbled in photography. There were all these things that I tried, styling fashion parades, like running events, different things that I've tried. And I've always kind of had this idea of I really wanted that independence and freedom to do my own thing. My actual business now, though, really was an accident, I think, that really happened, a kind of line of destiny. But I really found the path that I'm on now within my business through choosing to commit to my own personal development. And I had this moment where I actually went on my dream trip to America, and I was there for 3 months. And my intention of going there was actually to try and move there because I thought that was my purpose, my plan. That was where it was all going to unfold for me. Because even though I was trying all these different things, to me, I always just was very much had this feeling of like, this isn't it. This isn't it. Like I was still looking for my purpose. And I was like, I just can't seem to find it. So I was just trying on all the hats, trying on all the different things, hoping that something was going to stick. And I realized on that trip, the reason that it wasn't sticking was not necessarily because I hadn't found my purpose. I realized that even if I knew and it dropped in my lap the next day, that I actually wasn't the space to hold my purpose, and that I actually needed to do the work on myself in order to be the version of myself that would be willing to knock on any door and make opportunities happen for myself and to actually hold the vision and execute that in my life. And so I came home from that trip instead of staying there and really committed to spending that year, which was 2017, completely on personal development. That was my plan. I was like, I am going to become the woman that I know is deep down there somewhere. I'm going to become that version of myself that really can welcome in a sense of purpose and actually hold a powerful vision for my life. And it was actually in my first personal development workshop that I went in there and I had this incredible 2-day experience. And a lot of it was very somatic based, like body based work. And by the time I left that weekend, I had a really big crack in this story that I'd been holding on to my whole life, which was that I wasn't good enough. And it didn't matter what I did up until that point. I was just holding that story of not being good enough. So by the time I got to the end of that weekend to really see that that wasn't true, and that it was just a series of experiences that had conditioned me to believe that.
Yes.
I got to the end of that weekend and I thought, whatever has just happened in this room is magic, and I want to be able to do this for other people. So I really just went on this huge path of still continuing my personal development, but then I got my coaching diploma. Through more personal development, I discovered breath work, and then I got my breath work qualification. And then through the path of actually then stepping full time into my business, that's where I actually started to look for something that was going to support me in business and actually support me to be able to do it in a way that was fulfilling for me, because I was trying a lot of different things, but none of it was quite working for me. And that's how I found human design. And that was kind of the final layer that I really incorporated into my business.
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't intend on necessarily for this to be a business model, but I always think I wanted my own business, or I wanted to do my own thing, or have something that I could pour myself into that felt really purposeful for me.
Yes.
But all of the other components just came from really giving it a go, continuing to lean into my own development, discovering new tools, and then wanting to share them with other people and make that impact.
Yeah. And the words that are coming to me right now as you're speaking is accidentally on purpose.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. It was like a journey that kind of brought you through, but it wasn't really planned. It was something that you discovered through, as you said, really focusing in on self first,
Yes.
and then being able to support others with the work that you do. And so you did mention both breath work and human design as part of the coaching that you provide now. So can you tell us a little bit more about those two modalities and how you support and help other people, through those different ways as well?
Yeah. So I think once I did my coaching diploma initially, that was all very mindset based. And even though that was powerful and I had some incredible shifts, the first time I experienced breathwork for myself, I truly felt reborn. Like there was such a big shift in my body. And I obviously then went and studied it, and we did 7 days of training in my initial training that was all breathwork journeys every single day. And in that week, so much shifted for me within the belief in myself. Like I really let go of that belief of not being good enough. My voice changed on that training.
Wow.
So I came home and I didn't realize that I had a conversation with someone, and they were like, "Oh, that quiver in your voice is gone." I didn't even know I had one. I didn't even realize, but I was so scared to speak and scared to be seen that I actually had this like nervous quiver in my voice. And
Wow.
so doing these breathwork journeys, that changed. And it also changed my posture. I used to hunch over and be very round shouldered. And now I stand with my shoulders back after that training. So I realized when I was doing the breathwork is we can do a lot of work on the mindset, but that belief, that experience can still be living in the body. So what breathwork does is it actually creates the spaciousness in your body to release that stored and trapped emotional energy or experience from the physical body, which obviously then has a profound impact on the mindset as well. But also, it really does regulate our nervous system, which gives us more capacity to hold more in our life, more success, more intimacy, whatever that might be, more connection, more responsibility, all of those things that we can expand into through building more resilience and capacity in our nervous system. So a lot of the women that I work with are very purpose-driven women, because obviously that was such a big component of my journey. And so a lot of them are looking for a capacity to either, start a business, or they've got a business that is either in early or, in advanced stages, but they recognize that there's more that they desire, or a next level that they're trying to break through to. And so a lot of the work that I do is actually with the body to support that journey as well, because we can, think something repetitively in the mind, but if our body actually doesn't feel safe and secure to expand into that next level, we're not going there.
Exactly.
So,
And the nervous system, you've touched on that. It's such an integral part of our day-to-day life that I feel we need this taught in primary school,
I know.
because we're in this, state of fight or flight and anxiety. And then we think, oh, why do we feel like crap, at the end of the day or the middle of the day, or when we wake up out of bed and we're meant to be feeling refreshed and energized, ready to go for the day.
Mm.
But the things that we do impact our nervous system. And so breath work, as you said, really just enables you to regulate things.
Yes.
And once that's regulated, then you've got a really nice foundation to be able to go and do the things that you need to do. Yeah.
Because if your nervous system is like, being on video is unsafe, like even though it's not saying that to you directly, like if you're having that fear of like, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be on video, I want to start a podcast, but I'm really scared to speak into the microphone, I want to start a YouTube channel, but I can't bring myself to hit record, like all of these things are symptoms of potentially needing to work on your nervous system. So it's like, okay, I actually feel resourced within my body to hit record, to go live, to do a reel, to write that post, to launch the website. All of these different things can help us do it when we actually feel safe within ourselves to do so. So that's a huge component, I think, is that body work. And I think it's something that we do tend to overlook when we are, you know, always focusing on the mindset. It's like we actually need to integrate the body into it as well, because your body is potentially blocking you from that next level of success.
I think so many listeners are going to have aha moments just from listening to that there and just go, what? Wait, like how? Like I've never even looked into that before.
Yeah.
And I know that prior to us connecting, I myself didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And it is quite, transformative. And so you mentioned breathwork as well as human design. So tell me a little bit about how that came to be and how that's also integrated into the wonderful work that you do.
Well, that's how we connected, because you stumbled across human design and obviously wanted to learn all about it, which is kind of what happens, I think, when you find human design.
Yeah.
And so for me, it really came from stepping into my business full time. And at that stage, the primary thing that I was doing was breath work, which was all in person at the time. I had in-person workshops, I had retreats lined up. So I had all of this, I guess, anticipated income, or the way I was going to receive my income in 2020, which is when I went full time. And so I literally had my last day of full-time employment on the 1st of February. That's when I went full-time.
Oh my gosh, of 2020.
Obviously, we know what happened several short weeks later.
We won't go there.
And so now we're locked down. All of a sudden, I've had to cancel all my breath work.
Oh my gosh.
All of my in-person events, workshops, retreats, everything is off the table. And at that point, I didn't even know you could do breathwork sessions online. That was something that I hadn't been trained in. And so thankfully, the place that I had studied with did us a little training course of how to take that online. But still, the people that actually wanted to do breathwork, some of them didn't want to do it online. They were like, we'll just wait, because we obviously had no idea. I'll just wait till we can come back in the studio. So it completely changed what I thought my business was going to be. And obviously at this stage, everyone's pandemic pivoting and all the things are happening. And I'm like, wait. I don't even know how to do a business full time yet. Like, I can't pivot. I just need to be able to have an income. Like, because I had been at the same job prior to that for 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
So I had this like full, safe, secure weekly paycheck. And I'd gone from that to thinking, okay, cool. I think I've got my bases covered. I've got a good nest egg. We can move forward. I know where the money's coming from. I know I can do this, to, oh my God, $0 coming in. And so it was such a confronting thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to move from there. And so I was asking all of my friends who were a little bit further along in business than me, who were like maybe 3 years ahead of me, what do I do? What do I do? How do I do it? What are you doing? What's working? What should I do? And they were all telling me what to do. I was doing the exact same thing as all of them were doing to the letter, and none of it was working for me, and I was getting no results. And so I was really starting to feel very hard on myself, and I was like, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. And I was also starting to experience a lot of like frustration around the fact that nothing was working. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? Like, why can I not make this work? And around that time, human design just started popping up everywhere in my feed, as it does. And I thought, oh, okay, I'd kind of heard of human design like 2 years prior. I'd pulled up my chart. I thought, that looks so complicated. I'm just going to throw that in the too hard basket. Don't care about that. And then I thought, you know what? I'm at this breaking point. I'm at this point of desperation. I'm about to give in. I just need to know something. Maybe there's some answers in this. So I booked a reading. And on that reading, I had so much confirmation that just made everything in my life make sense. I was like, wow, okay, this is why I am the way I am. There's nothing wrong with that. And also, the reason that none of the strategies, the systems, the processes that everyone was telling me to do were working for me was because they weren't designed for my energy type. I didn't realize at the time that my energy works completely different to, at that time, everyone in my inner circle. So I was getting advice that was working for them that was never going to work for me. And so I had such an expansive permission slip that I took what I learned on that and I started implementing it in my business. And within a month, all of the results that I thought I had to work years towards, and I'd been trying and trying and trying and trying and trying, arrived. And I was like, whoa, that was so quick. And so
Yes.
it was such a big turnaround for me so rapidly that I was like, this is amazing. And I was obviously then continued my own experiment. I was like, this is so works. It works. It works. And I was telling everyone about it. And then towards the end of that year, I did a human design for business program. And the lady who was running that said, what are you pretending not to care about on our first call? And I was like, human design, because I had been thinking to myself, I don't need to study that. I don't need to add that
Yeah.
in. I've already got the mindset. I've got the body. I don't need this. But I'm so glad I said yes to that, because obviously that is now the primary source in my business of how I work with people. And essentially, it really is a user manual and our blueprint for our human experience. And it gives us so much indication to how we're designed to not only operate on a day-to-day basis,
Mhm.
but it really does give us such a detailed understanding of what our strengths are, what our gifts are, what our purpose is, the way that we're here to exchange energy in the world so that we can make the greatest impact. It speaks to our leadership. There's so many things in there that we can get answers for.
Yep.
And I think then that gives us this really beautiful, unique framework to work with the individual rather than give them this very generic, homogenized version of what to do, and we can
Yes.
start to meet the needs of the individual. So once I started working with human design, that was so incredible because it gave me this blueprint to be like, okay, great. This is the backdrop we're now working with. This is you. And how can we bring the best of you out using these other tools for the mindset and the body? And also, it
Exactly.
gave me a roadmap to be like, okay, well, this person needs slightly more breath work because of the way that their design operates, or this person needs slightly more mindset because of the way that their design operates, or
Yeah.
we need to work on this specific thing because of what I'm seeing in your design. So it gave me such a really cool, clear, specific way to work with people that was so empowering for the person on the other end receiving that, because
Yes.
they felt so seen and validated of like, oh my God, nothing is wrong with me. But this is actually how I am, and I don't need to fight that. But there's ways in which I can work to make the best of that.
Absolutely. And that really is, I think, your genius in being able to bring the modalities together and identifying and seeing opportunities specifically for that individual and person.
Mm,
And I know that we've spoken about this before too, but there's a lot of resources online. I mean, the internet is the place to go. If you want to learn about anything, you can jump on there now, particularly with the 2020 that was and the years that, preceded that too. We've accelerated the amount of websites that are online by 5 years,
mm,
because at that time everyone was just taking their business and going online, whether that
yeah.
was as a coach or yoga or whatever it was, that
Mm,
people just went, right, I need to be online because I really don't have a choice, as you said, not knowing what the future, was to hold. But yes, bringing your genius to the world. And as you mentioned, that's how we connected too. And I love the way that human design, as you said, is that blueprint and roadmap, because you can use it in so many different ways. I mean, I use it with my, SEO clients. And again, lots of resources online, but I think that the impact comes from and the transformation comes from working with people one on one, not just providing them with something that's generic that they're trying and trying and trying to do, and they're sitting there really doubting their own abilities and their own skills because they're following someone else's blueprint where that was a successful outcome for them. And then they're sitting there as you did and had the experience of going, why I'm doing exactly what you're doing and I'm not getting the same
Yeah.
results. And I think that's a really important thing that we need to highlight, particularly in 2024 and beyond, is that yes, there are lots of resources and things online, but gosh, it's such a difference to be able to work with someone one-on-one
Mm,
and to have something that's super customized to your specific needs. And
yeah.
that's definitely like where where your genius is. And again, that's great that we've got all these things online, but the real transformation and the real impact comes from having something that is specifically tailored, to you.
Yeah.
And I just love the way human design provides that foundation as well, of being able to, okay, here's a marketing strategy or an SEO strategy or whatever it is, but it's still so specific to the person that you're working with, because you've got that blueprint to guide you and go, okay, well, this, thing isn't going to work for you because you actually don't thrive by doing this particular activity. Let's find something that's in more alignment with you. And
Yeah.
that's where you're going to see, the results.
100%.
So in saying that, so once you were able to take your business and I guess revive it from the early stages of 2020 to now, what are some of the ways that you've been able to get visible? Obviously, we're on the Let's Get Visible podcast, and be able to get your message, really out there far and wide. What were some of the things that you started to really use at that time and beyond that time to get visible?
I think social media has always been a really powerful tool for me personally. I
Yes.
really have had my Instagram account going actively, I guess, as more of a business account since 2012. And I think within that, obviously, it has taken many different forms because of all
Yes.
of the different hats that I wore. So I guess the version of this Instagram hasn't always been there. But I think using social media to build a community and build a audience has always been something that I've really enjoyed, because I am a very creative person as well. So I love that as a creative outlet. Honestly, even if nobody was watching my social media, I'd probably still be on there creating, because I just love it also as a record of all of the things that I have
Yeah.
done, all of the things I've created. So I always think that that has been probably one of my primary ways of
Mm-hmm.
visibility. That has obviously shifted a lot over the last few years as well. And I think that that probably has been a place that my relationship has been changing to
Yeah.
as the shifts have sort of come through. So that has definitely been something that has always been there. But I do feel like we are at a very interesting tipping point with social media now. So I definitely started to realize that I couldn't obviously rely on that in the same way. And I actually lost access to my Instagram account for 3 days about a year ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure what happened, but it just went down for 3 days and it wasn't even in the search bar. I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy, because I've spent all of this time putting effort into this thing and it didn't necessarily, if it had gone, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like all my eggs are really in that basket, particularly Instagram, because that is where I've primarily created and primarily built my audience. So that was a big
Yes.
eye open to me that things needed to change. I
Yep.
would also say secondary to that, actually in-person connections have been invaluable to me along the
Yes.
way, especially in the early phases of my business, I used to do these breakfast club events, which were like networking events for women, obviously my in-person breath work, my in-person workshops. I think that actually coming offline to build those connections has been really powerful. But I think within both of those, I guess, were very relational based. And that was really how
Yes.
my business was growing and getting visibility, was all through referral and word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided that we needed to actually look at a different way of increasing my visibility, because I am a manifestor in human design. And so my ability to create and have that output and build those connections is not always consistent. And
Yeah.
so I realized through my own, I guess, experiment with human design that one of the things I really needed was something that worked for me when I couldn't work for it. And that was how
Yes.
we ended up working together.
I love how you put that. Working for me. Yeah, exactly. It's there
Yeah.
for you when you're not working on it.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes. Love it.
so I decided obviously to work with you so that we could increase my visibility online in terms of my SEO
Yep.
and the visibility that that would create for me. And one of the things that I noticed so quickly of us starting to work together was I have obviously intake forms for all of the different appointments that I have. And within that, it was always, through a friend, so-and-so's mastermind, like whatever was the primary way, I would say that would be like number one. And then after working with you, all of a sudden it was like Google, 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 like so many things that were coming through, or like specific website pages and different things. And I was like, wow, this is working quickly, because prior to that, Google as an option would have been so far down the ways that people found me. And then all of a sudden it was the primary way people were finding me. And I did notice then obviously an increase in my income, because then people were finding me in this new organic way that wasn't reliant on me having to do specific activities to build those relationships or put content out there or whatever that might be. And so that was really cool. And even the other day, actually, I had a booking come through and they said they'd found me through a blog post that I had done, which is something that you helped me see that I was maybe not doing correctly, because I was basically just using it as like, an extra mailing list, template, or using Instagram captions and just throwing them in there. So having that more strategic approach to that, obviously then that was another way that someone found me. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. So that was really something that I have noticed, particularly in the last 12 months since we started working together, has been so great. And last year I experienced some health challenges where I really actually couldn't do those activities. And I was so reliant on the work that we had done to actually bring those opportunities to me when I actually was not able to go out and chase them in that same way, or show up and attract those opportunities through my own visible output. And so, yeah, it has really changed the game for me to know that my website is working optimally. And obviously you helped me reshape the way that that looks and the customer journey. And I just feel so much confident, like more confident with what is actually now sitting there.
Yes.
And that it is actually doing what it's meant to be doing, and that people can find me, and that all of the pages and the links and everything is just working seamlessly. So I know that it's actually supporting my customers or clients to when they find me, to understand what it is that I do and get the answers that they need, and also have, a better user experience as a result.
Yeah. And just the transformation that you've gone through with the website and with the visibility, and even the way you've been able to restructure the things that you want to offer and the things that you want to do moving forward as well. I think that's a really important part of the visibility process, is going through and making that website work for you, rather than it just sitting there, as I like to call them, pretty potatoes, where they've got the nice, pictures and they've got some content.
Mine was a beautiful potato.
Yeah, it's a beautiful potato.
It
the most gorgeous images and things, but it's really finding, again, your individual and, specific strategy that is going to be best for your business, because it's not a one size fits all approach. It's really not. And if there are certain things, like, you are such an amazing communicator, as everyone can hear on the podcast. You speak so beautifully, and I could sit here and just listen to you like this, like all day. But yeah, it just, you have to find your strengths, and that's no different, when it comes to SEO and your strategy and things like that too. So thank you for sharing those tangibles and things that you've been able to see through that work. And you've had a large part in doing that work. But as you said, it's also great that you can take your foot off the accelerator when you need to, and not be dependent on showing up every single day in order for you to continue to have a business, that still runs and that still works for you.
And I also think the work that we did together also just adjusted my mindset slightly to some of the pieces that I was putting out there, in more of that capacity that is that work that is working for you. So things like blog posts, podcasts, prior to that, it was very much like on a whim, whatever, like this is something fun to write down, or I'm just going to do a podcast episode on this. And I wasn't really thinking about the fact that this lives on the internet in a very searchable way. So how do I actually want to lead people through the various steps in my world, and what is actually going to be most impactful? As you said, if people have never heard of you and they're just finding that blog post, I was like, I didn't really think about the people that have maybe just stumbled across that isolated blog post. I was more thinking like the regulars going there and, finding and going to seeing what's the latest blog post. I wasn't really thinking about that being its standalone, arm that was going to lead people in a different way. With the podcast, I'd never once thought about having that as a library of resources that I could direct people to, or that would have a purpose in directing people to other things. So it really did change my mindset of really making the most of the energy that I did have to create things that would be effective in leading to more opportunities down the road through that user experience. So I think even though that was obviously, connected to our website, it really did make me start to think outside the website in the ways in which I was then leading people back to that.
Yeah, and it's long lasting, so there's no off switch. So as you were saying with your podcast episodes or even with your blog posts, they're things that you've created, you've published, you've put out into the world, and they're things that people will find in 12 months, 2 years, 3 years time. They just don't go anywhere. There's no switch to turn it off.
Exactly. And that's, I think, where I was maybe dropping the ball previously, because when we actually, I think one of the things that really helped me see this is one of the activities was us building the podcast page on the website to increase the SEO and, activating the podcast on different platforms that I didn't have it published on yet to increase that visibility. And then as I was going through those episodes, I was like, what purpose does this podcast episode actually have other than being fun to create? I'm like, it doesn't really actually have a purpose. So I think then that made me think differently about season 2. And actually, I'm now noticing with season 2, I now have this incredible resource of where I can be like, okay, you're struggling with that, go to this episode. Like this episode.
I love that.
So like it just, I think, helped me see that in a new way. And even with the blog post, I was like, well, I'm not just going to, again, copy and paste an Instagram caption in here. These all have a purpose. And it's now then allowing me to actually sit down and put the structure in place for them to actually be a working arm of the business as well. So there was a lot that really happened within that. And just, I think just really thinking so differently about that. And it also gave me a lot of space to get clear on what it is that I actually do and how it is that I actually help people, because we really had to build that optimization in that customer journey and then really thinking about how to nurture people. And I think for me, I really didn't have the proper nurture sequences in place to help people go from point A to point B. And now I actually have like such a huge, stable foundation of all of these different pathways into my business that really I think I can accredit to working with you, because it really helped me understand, okay, well, if they're landing here, how are they where are they going next, and how can I support them in that process?
Yeah, and great point. SEO isn't just putting keywords on a page. It's not just what you're doing on site. It's the full journey of where you're taking that, initial inquiry and customer through to, and as you said, all the different resources that you now have. So restructuring the way you operate is part of the optimization, process, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So hindsight, this is a question I love to ask my guests. Is there anything that you would do differently business-wise? If so, why?
Not have thrown my human design chart out 2 years
Yeah.
when I first opened it up. Damn, and I should have looked at it then.
Love that.
That would have definitely been one thing that I would have liked to have dove into, because I feel like if I had have explored that 2 years before I did, the way that would have shifted the trajectory of my business would have been very different. I also think, and I know, there was nothing I could have done about this, but I wish I had have been more prepared heading into that pandemic. If I had the business that I do now, obviously the way that I would have been able to work in that time would have been extremely different. And I think that is, something that I still find challenging. But at the time, I was still a baby. There was nothing that I could have really done with that. No. But I also think the only thing that I would do in hindsight, looking backwards, is probably just say yes more. I think there was a lot of space in my very early stage of my journey that I took a lot of bold yeses. But I think just recognizing that the more that we really do that work on ourselves to have the courage to say yes before we feel ready and really take those opportunities and step outside of our comfort zone. I think that's also how we continue to accelerate things. So I think it would have been definitely looking at my human design chart more, saying more courageous yeses even before I felt ready, and not really believing that story of, you know, not being good enough, and not believing that story for myself, so that I would have really taken more of those opportunities. But I think the main thing is also just doing things in my own way sooner. I wish I really had
Yes.
really just trusted the way that I felt intuitively that I wanted to run my business, and not have invested so much in actually bringing myself away from who I was. I think that that would have definitely accelerated my progress as well. But at the same time, I don't really have like regrets. I think that
No.
it all led me exactly where I was meant to go when I did. And, you know, if we could jump in a time machine, maybe we would have brought Facebook stocks or something. I don't know. But again, we didn't know. So just say more courageous yeses.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
And something that the audience can take away. So is there a key tip or a key strategy, either for business or life, that you feel would be, yeah, super important for our listeners to take away from today's podcast episode?
So I think the main thing that I would say is, you know, obviously my work really exists around human design. And I think even just understanding your energy type can be
Yes.
so powerful. And so I'll give you a link to add in the show notes that you can pull your human design chart, and also a link that you can learn just a little bit more about your energy type. I think that if we can just understand how we're actually designed to exchange energy with other people, that's obviously what we are here to do in business. We're here to exchange
Yes.
our energy to make an impact. And so I think if we can just understand even that introductory element of how can we actually just embrace the way that we're naturally designed, even just understanding that and then putting one step in place as a result. So say, for example, for me as a manifester, learning that I was here to initiate, I realized that I was actually running my business in permission energy. So for me, that flip was actually stopping asking, what should I do? What should I do? Do you want to learn this? If I did this, would you like it? Do you want me to create this? Like, what do
Yeah.
you want me to create? That was creating a repelling energy. So to me, switching to my strategy, which was to inform, then I started implementing that in my business, and I started saying, this is what I'm creating. This is what we're doing. This is why it's going to be great. This is the podcast. This is the link. And it created such a bigger impact. Say, for example, for our beautiful generators and mani-gens, which is what you are,
Yes.
understanding you're here to work with your sacral joy and like what actually brings you satisfaction and the body cues you're getting. So I think really taking that understanding of what is my energy type and how can I just learn that first little layer, so that I can understand how I can then take one insight from that and start to make that energetic shift in my business, so that people can actually feel me rather than creating that repelling or dull effect in my business. So how can I actually just step into the power of how I'm here to exchange energy with the world, I would say, is where I would start in terms of that tangible way to apply that.
Amazing. Absolutely love it. And yes, I will be dropping all your links into the show notes for today's episode. Thank you so, so much for your time. As I said, I could sit here and just listen to you all day. We'd have a 10-hour long podcast episode.
I'm sure we could.
Yeah, we're about to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But thank you again for your time. I really, really appreciate your words of wisdom as always. Love the work that you do. And I'm sure, again, lots of aha moments and takeaways from today's episode for our listeners as well.
Thanks for giving this show a listen, and don't forget to leave your feedback and rating. If you want to learn more about me or my services, please jump on over to letsgetvisible.com.au, where you'll find show notes and links to my social media profiles so you can connect there as well. Okay, well, that's a wrap for another episode. So I'll join you next time on the Let's Get Visible podcast. You know, man.